But if I turned you white, your mother wouldn't recognize you.
Yeah.
I wish there was some way. I know a way! Mommy!
Yes, sweetheart?
Mommy, don't be mad.
It's Christmas, and Tabitha, wishing that she and her friend Lisa were sisters, uses her powers to make it so. Almost. Both girls take on a polka dot complexion that even Samantha can't clear up. Hi, I'm Mark Simpson.
And I'm David Pierce.
I'm Adam Michael James. Welcome to Twitch Talk.
Merry Christmas!
Welcome back to Twitch Talk. I'm Mark Simpson. I'm the producer of the Bewitched Fanfare events, and our next event is scheduled for May 6th through 8th in Salem, Massachusetts. You can get all the information by visiting bewitchedfanfare.com. I'm also the admin of the Bewitched Fanfare, Twitch Talk TV, and Tabitha the Series Facebook pages and groups. And you can get all the latest information on Twitch Talk by visiting twitchtalktv.com. Tonight, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Bewitched episode number 213, Sisters at Heart. The episode was written by the 10th grade English class at Thomas Jefferson High School in Los Angeles, and the teleplay was by Barbara Avedon and William Asher. It was directed by William Asher, and the executive producer was Harry Ackerman. The regular cast includes Elizabeth Montgomery as Samantha, Dick Sargent as Darren, David White as Larry Tate, Aaron Murphy as Tabitha, and David and Greg Lawrence as Adam. With the additional cast, Don Marshall as Keith Wilson, Janae Michelle as Dorothy Wilson, Vanetta Rogers as Lisa Wilson, and Parley Bear as Mr. Brockway. The role of Miss Hathaway is uncredited. And as always, we're going to start off with the official Screen Gems episode description. Keith and Dorothy Wilson, a young African-American couple, drop off their daughter Lisa at the Stevens house before going on an overnight trip. It is the first time Tabitha will have someone stay overnight with her, and she gets a warning from Samantha. No witchcraft. Tabitha and Lisa want very much to be sisters, but they were told by a girl in the park that they can't because they are not the same color. Darren has been working on a big account and hopes to have the contract signed by that afternoon. His client, Mr. Brockway, wants to see what Darren's home life is like, however, before he signs. He happens to drop by the Stevens home when Lisa is the only one downstairs, and she answers the door. Lisa tells Brockway that she and Tabitha are sisters, and he naturally assumes that Darren's wife is black. He tells Larry that he wants another man to handle the account since Darren is not stable enough. Larry decides to hold the office Christmas party at the Stevens home to prove Darren's stability. Meanwhile, Tabitha has told Lisa that she is a witch and has changed them both to polka-dotted people so they look more alike. Samantha explains to Darren that Tabitha used wishcraft instead of witchcraft and that it should wear off by the next day. As Christmas Eve dawns and the two girls are still covered with polka dots, Sam and Darren are beside themselves as Lisa's parents will be arriving that afternoon. Sam finally gets a witchscription from Dr. Bombay that will cure the witchcraft, but Tabitha, understanding that she and Lisa can still be sisters if they are not the same color, is ready to concentrate, and the girls are back to normal just in time. At the office party, Brockway learns that Darren doesn't have a mixed marriage and is ready to sign the contract when Larry refuses. Brockway leaves, but comes back the next day on Christmas to apologize to the Stevens and admit that he is a racist. And the log line reads, Tabitha uses witchcraft and learns a lesson in sisterhood. Now, let's check in with David for some of the historical information on the episode and some of the pop culture trivia of the day.
Thanks, Mark. I'm David Pierce, author of the Bewitched history book, which contains episode descriptions, reviews, trivia, and a whole lot more on all 254 episodes of Bewitched. It is available from bearmanormedia.com, Amazon.com, and other fine book retailers, and is the perfect gift for every Bewitched fan on your holiday shopping list. Tonight's episode, Sisters at Heart, was the 13th episode of the 7th season and the 213th episode of the series overall. The story was written by the 10th grade English class at Thomas Jefferson High School in Los Angeles, and we'll be hearing more about that later in tonight's episode. According to the official Screen Gems production schedule, production completed on this episode November 12, 1970, and was originally broadcast on Christmas Eve, December 24, 1970. Filming took place on Stage 4 at the Columbia Studios in Hollywood. Also on Christmas Eve 1970, the number one song on the U.S. Billboard chart was Isn't It a Pity by George Harrison. Walt Disney's The Aristocats was released on this day, and the number one movie at the box office was Paramount Pictures' Love Story, starring Ryan O'Neal and Ally McGraw. It earned $136,400,000. In today's economy, that translates to a whopping $9,148,256,597.94. Wow! Let's go Christmas shopping! Now let's say ho 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 to Mike, who I'm sure has a big old Santa sack of continuity. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you, David. Hello, Twitch talkers. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and all that stuff to all you guys. I am Adam Michael James, author of The Bewitched Continuum. I, Samantha, Take This Mortal Darren, excuse me, and Samantha 70s, just out now, and there is a holiday episode in there, just because I felt like on the show they never really had the family coming together for Christmas, so I felt like that needed to be rectified. Anyway, we're not talking about that Christmas episode, we're talking about this episode, Sisters at Heart, which is actually my favorite episode of the series, and there's lots to talk about there, but let's just get a few good sound bites in here just to start things off with. Adam is getting to be as cherubic as Tabitha was at his age, and better yet, there's a definite affection forming between the Stevens siblings, which is a joy to see. Samantha being outnumbered by Tabitha and Lisa is a fun contrast, with their kids enjoying their witchy predicament more than Samantha would prefer. There's just something about Lisa's wonder and amazement at being surrounded by magic for the first time. Her line, "This is better than Disneyland," I mean, that really says it all. Also, I like the even though the episode was created by 10th graders, obviously there was William Asher's influence in there, which is unusual because usually he just directs and produces. And I think that explains some of Larry's best lines in there, like telling Keith that he wants to hear every exquisite economic detail. It's just like Larry to think that victory in business means a white Christmas. And even Samantha, when she and Darren are talking about having to explain being witches to the Wilsons, Samantha's saying, well, they understand about minority groups. I think it's kind of a fun parallel. Now, Darren does begin the episode very pleased to meet Lisa. However, Tabitha and Lisa obviously know each other quite well for Lisa to be spending the night. So I wonder, how is Darren only seeing Lisa for the first time? Lisa is Keith's daughter, and Keith works with Darren, so it seems likely that Darren and Keith realized they had daughters in common and introduced them to each other, and that's a meeting that Darren would have been present for, so I don't know why he was only meeting Lisa in that moment. And finally, one of my favorite bits not only my favorite line of the episode, but something that just straightens a lot of things out is when Tabitha says, "Witches don't ride brooms and they don't wear pointy hats and have warts on their nose." She's schooling Lisa, but it's breaking down a witch stereotype that has gone back and forth over the course of the series. I mean, in the pilot, Endora said that witches didn't ride brooms, but then we have seen other Christmas episodes where Samantha was on them. So for Tabitha to finally come out and say, "Nope, that doesn't happen," that worked for me. And how's it going to work for you, Mark?
It's great for me, Mike. And we'll keep working on after this break as we continue with our tribute to Bewitched episode number 213, Sisters at Heart. We'll be right back.
For a few good laughs, the kick of adventure, a quiet moment to share a song. That's part of the fun of life.
Welcome back to Twitch Talk, and today we're going to be discussing episode number 213, Sisters at Heart. Does everyone have their holiday beverage?
Ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho, ho. All right, let's get started here. And as always, when we start, we have someone give a brief description of the episode, just so that I guess basically that I can test somebody and make sure they actually are familiar with it. So I think this time I'm going to pick Max.
I knew it was going to be me. Okay, so as you've already mentioned, this is a groundbreaking episode. Basically, Tabitha's having a friend over called Lisa, and she is the daughter of one of Darren's clients, work colleagues. And Tabitha and Lisa are being all girly and love the idea of being sisters. And then when they're at the park, which you don't see, another girl says they can't be sisters, sorry, as Tabitha is white and Lisa is black. Lisa then answers the door to Darren's client, who's called Brockway, and he takes on himself to find out about Darren's home life, whether he's good enough to work with. And he sees that Lisa is black, and she tells him that Tabitha is her sister. So we obviously realise that Brockway is racist by the expression on his face, and he assumes that Lisa must be the daughter of the housekeeper, and he also cancels the account as he thinks Darren is not stable, as he must be in a mixed marriage. So I think that's right. Then Lisa and Tabitha are painting, and she spills some paint all over herself, and Tabitha cleans herself up using witchcraft or wishcraft, and then Tabitha comes up with the idea that they could be sisters if they were both black or both white, but in the end she decides to give them polka dots, so it's the best of both worlds and they can represent black and white. Sam tries to remove them, but she can't, and then because Tabitha's used witchcraft and she wants them to stay like sisters like that, And then basically the client comes over. He says he doesn't want to carry on with the account because they're in a mixed marriage. Well, he thinks they're in a mixed marriage. And then Sam puts him under a spell where he sees some of the people as African American, and then he comes back the next day and realizes that he is a racist, which is quite cool for him to actually admit it. And she invites him over for Christmas dinner, and they share Christmas Day together. I think that's right.
But most importantly, he looks in the mirror and he sees himself.
And is there something else? Yeah.
We should mention that this episode, the story was actually written by the 10th grade English class at Thomas Jefferson High School in Los Angeles. And we'll be having a special feature on this a little bit later in the episode. So let's go through and let's talk about it. Talk about your feelings about the episode, any bloopers you may have noticed, or just whatever comes to your mind. So I'm going to start with Santa Claus, Eru.
Hashtag free Tabitha. Tabitha's supporter. I'm so happy finally she found an amazing friend. I absolutely love this episode. Especially, I was impressed by Larry's choice, which really stood out to me. Personally, I never ever experienced racism in the United States, but as an Asian, I experienced a lot of racism in England. And as an actor and singer, some British told me, oh, this monologue is for white people, you should never practice that. But I learned that they were actually really nice to me at some point. It's all about being educated or not. So I'm sure Mr. Brockway is not a villain, and I'm really glad that Samantha educated him and made him aware about this. So this story means a lot to me.
Okay. Robert.
Hey there. I really like this episode. Of course, the message is phenomenal, and the subject matter is pretty daring for its time. Super props to Oscar Mayer for stepping up and sponsoring, because it was, it was kind of a risky, not so much risky, but just an edgy kind of episode to put your name behind. So good for them. I think the episode still, the moral of the story still holds up. Some of the racial puns were a little cringe-worthy listening to them again today. Samantha makes the comment about the turkey meat, the black and white turkey meat. When Larry says White Christmas, and Mr. Wilson corrects him and says, watch that. I was like, okay. I thought the most really drop down hysterical moment of the episode was when Mr. Brockway brought the panda for Adam, because he didn't know if Adam was black or white or mixed. That for some reason just really tickled me. But yeah, I echo what Eru said about Larry. Good for Larry for standing up and rejecting the account, on the basis of not wanting to be associated with racist. But overall, yeah, I thought it was I thought it was great. I thought the execution was a little bit choppy. The makeup was kind of peculiar to me. They looked more Middle Eastern than African American, but so be it. But that's my take on it.
Okay. How about you, Justin?
Okay, I have to start by nitpicking the episode. I do that every time we do this, and I do it because I love the show. Now, Tabitha tells Lisa she's a witch. Isn't that disallowed by the Witches' Council? There were some other episodes where Samantha is punished for this, and she even has her powers taken away. But in this incident, apparently the Witches' Council decides to let it slide. Also, Lisa, I don't know how old she was in this episode, but she appears to be older than Tabitha. All that being said, this is my second favorite Bewitched episode of all time. It's such a beautiful episode. It highlights an underlying theme of this series, which is prejudice. And that message was kind of subtle throughout the whole show, but in this episode it was quite blatant. And sadly, it's a message that's still relevant to this country and still needed 50 years later. I love Samantha's speech about being able to be sisters without looking alike. And you're sisters if you share something or you love each other. This episode speaks to the spirit of Christmas. I enjoy the character growth that Tabitha and Mr. Brockway underwent. Amazing episode, loved it. Like I said, it's my second favorite Bewitched episode ever, so it's no mystery what my rating's going to be.
How about you, June?
Well, this episode is just so endearing to me, especially growing up in the Midwest, and some of my mom's family were kind of in rural America, and they were extremely racist. I mean, extremely. If they even had a hint that I was even friends with someone that was not my color, I got a major lecture. So, just knowing that children, young people wrote this episode was just really close to my heart too, because, it's kids breaking out of that, the hatred and bigotry and everything. And, that really means a lot. But this episode is just really sweet and wonderful. And, you definitely couldn't do it this day and age. You, even no matter what the wonderful message is, you just could not do that episode in today's standards. But yes, it's one of my favorites too, always.
All right. Susan, how about you?
One thing I noticed is in this episode, I believe it's the first time Tabitha really breaks out and uses her body to do magic other than just the little twitch. She's like Endora, doing her arms out like this and this, and so that was pretty interesting. And it's interesting to think about the development of witchcraft. You've got your wishcraft, and I thought that was kind of weird that she was having wishcraft at this age, because I think that's more appropriate for a little one that can't articulate or make the motions to make magic happen, but they just wish it. And so I thought that was a little out of place for a kid as old as Tabitha at this point. I liked Sam's maxi skirt and her little rope ribbon that she wears, or yarn ribbon that she wears at the end of Christmas. I remember having maxi skirts and those yarn ribbons. I had tons of them. And so that was fun to see that. One little bone I have to pick is with the polka dots. I think it would have been more effective if Lisa's polka dots had not been white, so dramatically white, if they had been more Caucasian colored. That would have made the whole thing premise more believable to me, because that's not a color that you ever see on anybody's skin. Oh, and then the last thing I wanted to say was that when they cut at the end to go move the camera outside the windows and look back in, and you hear them playing Silent Night, and you see the Christmas lights, and Darren and Samantha have a tender moment. I love that, and every time I see it, it makes me cry. I don't care how many times I've seen it. It just brings tears to my eyes. It's just, I guess just because it reminds me so much of Christmas when I was little, and the colored lights, and it's just those big colored lights and all the icicles on the tree, and it's just that's really touching to me. But I love everything everybody else has said about the whole racism issue and the way they dealt with that. I just I like to pick at little details too, Justin. That's all.
Okay, Max, how about you?
I think everything's been said really, but this episode is just amazing. I remember when I watched it first time when I was a kid. We never had the introduction that Liz makes at the beginning and the finale bit, where she mentions about it was written by school children. So I didn't actually know that. So when I did watch that again later, I was quite amazed that it was written by kids, and I just thought, yeah, that's fantastic. And as a teacher now, I just think the teacher of that class must have been just like really proud of those kids, and it's just fantastic. Also, I was going to say, it's also Christmassy. It's just light. It's got a fantastic message that's relevant today. I love how cute Adam is at the beginning as well, playing under the tree, and he's a bit cheeky as well. It's brilliant. It's also a little uncomfortable to watch now, as already been mentioned, and as I mentioned before, that when Brockway's at the door and he says, "Oh, your mummy must be the housekeeper," and I just it's not funny at all, and I don't know whether it's intentional, but there isn't as much laughs when it's almost like, should we laugh at this? Should we not? Obviously, we shouldn't be laughing at this, but when it was written and when it was screened, so obviously a lot of people would have done. I love the way that Larry says, he just says, "I'm not, find another agent, I'm not interested," which is great for him. That's one great thing that Larry does. Yeah, and I love the end of the credits as well, how it finishes. It's just a brilliant episode. It's nice. Yeah.
All right, Anna.
When I first saw this episode, I mean, it was years ago on DVD, and I think it showed Elizabeth Montgomery at the end giving the background, and I was just stunned. I mean, I looked at it almost to make sure it was what I'd seen. I think it's so well written. I was amazed it was by 10th graders, and what an amazing project. I mean, I'm sure there'll be more information about it later, but it would have been so wonderful if they'd been able to do more projects like that. And, but it's amazing. And yeah, what a cool experience. And it's very well paced, and that's not the case with every Bewitched episode. And it's an episode that was very much a theater piece to me. I think it all could have taken place on the same stage. And it was interesting to me to see like who was in it and who wasn't. And I'm sure, there would have been like lots of decisions about that. And I'm sure Agnes Moorehead probably didn't want to work with a bunch of high schoolers, but Endora's not in the episode. The Kravitzes aren't in the episode. And I was interested that it mentioned Dr. Bombay, but he didn't show up. I don't know. I wonder, I don't know if we have seen other episodes where he sends a prescription, but that was interesting. And the kids probably wanted to do a Tabitha Does Magic episode. And again, as another big Tabitha supporter, it is great to see her have a friend for the whole time. The color switching scene was just remarkable, considering, that was 2 child actors, and it was really long. And how talented were they to sustain that? And I was looking for examples of lines that would have been from the kids' lives. And also, I think one of the best lines is, "Hey, now we're sisters the other way." And I did not remember "Mortal is Blueberry Pie" from elsewhere. And I thought it was great. I wonder if the kids really chose to do an episode that had Larry in it. And maybe he was just more interesting to them than Andorra, the other characters. And, it's a very unusual episode showing Larry having an attack of conscience. And I wonder if that was the kids. And the scene where Darren is trying to keep Dorothy from going upstairs, it's just such classic Bewitched and so well timed. And I mean, I just would have thought that it was the regular writers. And it was just so moving because there's so many lines that were from the real lives of those young people, like, oh, your mommy must be the housekeeper. And so it was just a wonderful project, and I just really like this episode.
All right, very cool. Thank you, Anna. Finally, let's go to Taylor.
This is a really instructive episode about the television business. We tend to think of this episode very altruistically, very groundbreaking, but I want us to be a lot more critical of that idea, because it's really, really neither of those things, historically speaking. So instead, since there's such great history already written about the students who worked on the story, and how, the Ashers invited them up to the studio, and that's great, love that. But I also want to talk about what made this a good business decision for the studio system, for the studio that produced the show, because in order to understand what's happening, we really should understand what was happening in 1970 on television, because this episode and the subject matter it treats very much comes out of what's happening contextually in television. So in 1970, there's this culmination of demographics themed programming. We had all of these shows in the 60s, like Beverly Hillbillies, Mayberry RFD, Gomer Pyle, etc., etc. Really, really, really high ratings, but appealing to the wrong people. So in 1970, when we have a culmination of prioritizing the right kind of eyeballs over the mass of eyeballs, we start focusing more on urban-oriented shows without trees, as one of the network executives described it. And they started canceling shows that were really high in the ratings, but were attracting the wrong people. And Bewitched is really on the cusp of that. It's not the same kind of urban relevancy programming that All in the Family would define a month later, coming on the screen in January of 1970. And so there's a significant movement in television, especially at ABC, to really diversify programming and to try and attract more younger, urban-oriented, upper middle class audiences, as opposed to people in the flyover states that they had been attracting before. In '68, LBJ's Kerner Commission attacked the mainstream media, and he said, it said, quote, that television basks in a white world, looking out of it, if at all, with white men's eyes and white perspective. And there was a strong call for diversification on television. And so in 1968, all three networks met with Hubert Humphrey to come up with a way to diversify TV in order to appease rioters and, quote, promote racial understanding at the time. One TV Guide article said that it would help, this diversification would help cool off a long, hot summer of riots and protests. So actually, most television shows in between 1968 and 1971 did this exact thing. They brought in a black family or a black character. They had a whole episode written about a black issue, and then those people are never seen or heard from again. Gentle Ben did this, Mayberry RFB did this, Gomer Pyle did this, A Family Affair, Adam 12. ABC itself started picking up shows that had more black themes in 1968 through the 71 season, which is the same period at which Julia is running on NBC. So as much as we think of this as like this really cool opportunity for this 10th grade class, they were really the ones who were doing the favor for the studio by writing something that would appeal to people younger. And so while while I tend to think of this as sort of, it's awesome that they were letting a classroom come to the set. Hollywood has long been very insular, but at the same time, I want to push back against how altruistic this really is, and how it's probably much more of just a good business decision that Bewitched could make.
All right, thanks, Taylor. How about you, David?
Well, everybody's pretty much said everything I wanted to say, with the exception of, which I think is the most important part. Well, not the most important, but this is Elizabeth Montgomery's favorite episode. And I remember thinking that race issues were not that big of a deal up until the past couple years. And now we're essentially reliving 1968 and on. And I think it has much more relevance now than it did when I first watched it like 25 years ago. But unlike Goofs in the episode, when Parley Bear is looking in the mirror and he's like touching his skin and he brings it down, you can see his fingers. They look like sliced off fingers coming down. But anyway, it's a really good episode, and it does have a special place in my heart, especially just knowing that Liz loved it so much.
All right. Finally, Mike.
I always wanted to know how Tabitha, she wanted to unite them, and she goes, I know a way. And the next thing you see is, Mommy, don't be mad. Look what happened. It's a mistake. She didn't mean to do the polka dots. So if that's the case, what did she mean to do? It's never really explained. Also, I think the Stevens are, Sam and Darren are almost always pretty upset when Tabitha uses her powers, and here they are just totally chill with it. They never raise an issue about it. Maybe they're just getting over it. I don't know. A couple of other things. Just think of the dozens, hundreds of times that Samantha had to cater meals for parties, client dinners, etc. Now Larry hires a caterer. I mean, what was up with that? Then Samantha signals for Darren to wait while Brockway, gets his chance to see through black colored glasses, but she never, at least in that moment, doesn't explain to him what she's doing. So I hope at some point that Samantha said, yeah, this is totally what I did. And finally, following to Susan's point, Samantha explains that, Tabitha did all this through witchcraft, which is a great throwback to the episode It's Witchcraft, except that Tabitha was really small back then, and now Tabitha has done all kinds of other witchcraft, and so it just seems kind of I don't know what the right word is for it, but it just seems like it's too late to go back to the witchcraft well, because we've grown past it. And the other last thing about that is, if there's a whole book devoted to counteracting witchcraft, then where was that all along? Just wondering. Still, all that nitpicking aside, this is my favorite episode. And it was my favorite episode before I knew it was Elizabeth's favorite episode, because it's the mission statement. It's right there. It's everything that Bewitched is about. And yes, more blatant than always. And it needed it. And we need it now.
Okay. Well, I think it's a wonderful episode. As far as the bloopers, I was going to mention the really bad split screen that David mentioned, because you can see his fingers. Another blooper, if you look in the end tag when Mr. Brockway comes in and they're standing there in front of the tree and talking about dinner and stuff, on the wide shots, look at the window in the dining room. Half of the sheer curtain is open, and you can see that it's snowing. And then it's either that it's open in those shots, or there's a two shot of Liz and Dick Sargent, and you can see the window behind them, and it's closed. It's either, I may have it switched around, but in one shot you can see part of the curtain is pulled open and you can see it snowing through the window, and then in the other shot both of the sheer curtains are closed and you can't see through the window. Anyway, I do. I think it's a great episode, and that's all I can think of. So let's take a break, and we'll be back in just a minute.
I think this episode is beautifully filmed. There's scenes that are just so bright and all put together. And I think that the filmmaking sometimes shows a lot of unity, but also this jumpiness. In the first scene, Tabitha's wearing stripes and Lisa is wearing checks, and this did send me to look up the difference between checks and plaids. And Tabitha's wearing a bow. Dorothy is dressed, I mean, she's a cool lady. She's like going on a trip with the guys and stuff. You don't see Samantha do that. She's dressed very sophisticated, and Samantha's pretty drab in most of this episode. So I think it's really showing her as a housewife, mother of children. And they're all wearing like primary colors, so it's, it's together, but not entirely. And the next scene, the girls are in different dresses. Tabitha's still in stripes. Lisa's wearing plaid. Lisa has a bow and with a rounded collar, and Tabitha is the sharpness in her collar, and they're wearing different colored tights. So that's a huge, that was just hugely noticeable. And then the girls are wearing very differently styled nightwear. Tabitha's like pink jammies, and Lisa has this kind of like an ornate pattern and ribbons. So the final scene, Samantha's wearing that cool skirt, and Dorothy's still dressed really hip. Tabitha and Lisa are both wearing plaids, and they're wearing the exact same kind of shoes. So I just want to say, I mean, hooray for costume directors. There's just so much there.
No idea what to get anyone on this list. Maybe I can help. Who are you? I'm your fun side. Didn't know you had one, did you? Fun side? Who says I'm not fun? I have the perfect gifts for everyone on your, or should I say, our list. The Bewitched history book by David L. Pierce covers all 254 episodes of Bewitched with episode descriptions, reviews, and trivia, and also ties in the events of the times with each episode. Available in hardback, paperback, and ebook from BearManorMedia.com. Wow! And also available from Amazon.com are these books by Adam Michael James. The Bewitched Continuum, the ultimate linear guide to the classic TV series, explores the consistencies and inconsistencies of Bewitched, comparing and contrasting all 254 episodes like never before. I, Samantha, Take This Mortal Darren gives the series the finale it never had. And the all-new Samantha's 70s picks up where I, Sam, left off, taking the Stevens on a magical journey through the decade that brought you yellow smiles, bell-bottoms, and the fabulous days of disco. This is great! Thanks, Funside. There's something here for everyone on the list. Glad I could be of help. Hey, how come I've never seen you before? Well, I guess you've never been fundamentally challenged. Sorry. Fun side. Who says I'm not fun? 50 years ago, on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1970, Elizabeth Montgomery welcomed us to a very special episode of Bewitched.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Montgomery. Welcome to Bewitched, next on ABC. Tonight's show was created in the true spirit of Christmas. The story was written by the 10th grade English class at Thomas Jefferson High School in Los Angeles. My friends at Oscar Mayer and Company and I feel it is a very special Bewitched, conceived in the image of innocence and filled with truth.
It was 1970, and the students in teacher Marcella Saunders' 10th grade English class at Los Angeles' Thomas Jefferson High School were struggling. According to Miss Saunders, the majority of students were neither reading nor writing at high school level and were having trouble completing assignments, often showing up to class with their homework incomplete. But the students loved Bewitched, often discussing the episode they had all watched the night before. This sparked an idea, and with the help of Assistant Superintendent of the Los Angeles Unified School District, Dr. Vanetta Whitaker, Ms. Saunders contacted William Asher and Elizabeth Montgomery and told them of the students' plight. Sympathetic to the situation, the Ashers took action and brought the entire class to the set at Columbia Studios in Hollywood on several occasions, where they learned about the technical aspects of creating a weekly television situation comedy. Scripts for various episodes were also sent to the school for classroom use, and according to Marcella Saunders, the results were remarkable. All of a sudden, kids who could never write before were writing 3 pages. Kids who could never read before were doubling up on scripts and fighting over who would portray Darren and Samantha. The students themselves were grateful as well, and decided to thank the Ashers for their kindness by surprising them with a script that they had written themselves. In it was the story of Tabitha, who meets a new friend and wishes they could be sisters. When told that they couldn't be because Tabitha is white and her friend Lisa is black, the girls end up with polka dot complexions, thanks to Tabitha's witchcraft. So impressed with the story and the script itself, William Asher contacted writer Barbara Avedon, who had written 4 prior episodes of Bewitched, and told her about it, stating that it was so good, all it needed was a minor rewrite. In an interview for the Bewitched book, author Herbie J. Pilato spoke with Barbara Avedon in a most unusual location.
Barbara Avedon, I remember, she went down and visited the school, and it was in really a disarray, and it wasn't impressive. There wasn't a lot of, I remember her saying, green grass or anything like that. These were, inner city kids, a mixture of all different cultures, which was really neat. African Americans, Spanish, white, Italian, whatever. And so they loved Bewitched, and they wanted to write an episode. So it's funny because I remember when I interviewed Barbara, she was doing a lot of different things, very, very busy, and so I had to interview her at her manicurist. Went to this salon in Venice, not Italy, but Venice, California. And so she was just lying on this chair as she's having this conversation with me as she's having her nails done. So she's telling me about how she visited the school and the class and the kids, and she told them, I don't like to be rewritten, and I don't want to rewrite you, but I think if we work together we can come up with something amazing. And they did. She said she asked them what was special about Bewitched. Why did they think it was special? And one kid stood up and he says, well, Samantha loves Darren and Darren loves Samantha, and they're just so different. And they spoke and they said what the message was, the main message of the differences between these 2 characters and how it didn't matter. So Barbara was very impressed with that, and because it was so, I remember her saying it was so infested with the spirit of Christmas, they decided to make it a Christmas story.
Once the script was completed and production was to begin on the episode, the class was involved in every aspect of the process by attending story conferences, production meetings, and rehearsals throughout the week. Erin Murphy portrayed Tabitha and recalls the process.
The main difference started right at the table read, because instead of our little group of cast and crew, we had all the students from the high school there and their teacher, so it was a huge group of people. They all had their own director's chairs that said writer on the back, and it was a great week. We didn't usually have an audience there while we were filming, but they were there throughout the week, and you know, it was just one of those special episodes that people talk about all the time, and you know, given everything that's still going on, I think it's still relevant today.
Vanetta Rogers, now known as Vanetta Rowles, the daughter of Dr. Vanetta Whitaker, who was instrumental in getting the ball rolling, portrayed Lisa and remembers the experience as one that she will always cherish and describes it as one of the most delightful and fun moments of her life. The role of Dorothy Wilson was portrayed by Janae Michel.
It is so hard to believe that it's 50 Christmases ago that the children of Jefferson High School created this wonderful Sisters at Heart episode. I am grateful to have been part of that project. I know that if our friend and fellow actor Don Marshall were here, he would say how proud he too was of being part of this wonderful episode. I thank the kids for coming up with this idea. It's like all of the adults didn't think of it, but the children kept thinking, hey, where am I? And I'm happy that they thought that and they followed through on it. So congratulations. Thank you for making me a part of that project, and I love it.
To promote this landmark episode of Bewitched, Elizabeth Montgomery made a rare talk show appearance on The Merv Griffin Show on December 18, 1970, to tell the story of these young people who had become such an important part of her life. Elizabeth explained that the money that the students were paid for their script was donated to a fund that provided new equipment and teaching aids for their classrooms, and also gave them a new feeling of achievement. Sisters at Heart would go on to be awarded the Special Governor's Award by the Hollywood chapter of the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences at the local ceremony held at the Hollywood Palladium on March 21, 1971. The Emmy was given to teacher Marcella Saunders, the first non-professional to win the award, established in 1961, for her initiative and resourcefulness in using television to motivate her class, and the students received certificates acknowledging their achievement. In a 1991 interview with film historian Ronald Haver, Elizabeth Montgomery spoke about Sisters at Heart, which she referred to as the polka dot episode.
Do you have a favorite episode?
Do I? Yes. Well, yes. I love the Christmas one with the polka dots, with the little black girl and Tabitha. When Tabitha got the black polka dots and she got the white ones. I thought that was kind of neat. And actually, that one, if memory serves, was the one that the Jefferson High School kids helped write. And they loved the show, and they would come onto the set. She'd bring them on, and finally they said, well, can we write one? And I said, sure, go ahead. So they came up with the idea, and they wrote the script, and, you know, we helped them with it, but, I mean, they did it.
50 years later, the story is unfortunately still too relevant. But the experience provided these students from Thomas Jefferson High School a lifetime of memories and the motivation to succeed.
Hello everybody, this is Vanetta, and I am enjoying my special time of year. I love Christmas, and one of the Christmas memories is the Christmas show Bewitched that I worked on and was so lucky and happy to guest star as the character Lisa with so many wonderful people. I worked with Elizabeth Montgomery, Diane and Erin Murphy, and so many more. So I just wanted to say on this anniversary that this show, Bewitched, has touched the lives of very, very many people, including myself. And I am wishing you a happy, safe, and wonderful holiday. Bye, all. I love you.
But if you take away the dots, we won't be sisters anymore.
Tabitha, you can be sisters without looking alike.
But that girl in the park said that Lisa and me can't be sisters because I'm white and she's black.
That's right, Mrs. Stevens. That's what she said.
Well, she was wrong. Sisters are girls who share something. Usually the same parents, but if you share other things, good feelings, friendship, love, the way you two do, well, that makes you sisters in another way. Actually, all men are brothers, even if they're girls.
All right, well, welcome back to Twitch Talk. And now we're going to do our reviews and ratings. And we're going to go through the panel. We'll give a brief review of the episode, and then we'll rate it from 1 to 4 stars, 1 being the worst, 4 being the best. We'll go back at the end, and we'll average it out and come up with the overall rating. So let's start with Eru.
I love this episode. I will give this episode 4 stars. Even now, 2020, there's so many racists here, not only for African American, but a lot of Chinese or Asians suffering from COVID-19. I also experienced racism just because I'm an Asian, and we have to stop this. And I think it's very, very important that African American students, children, wrote this episode. So 4 stars.
All right, Robert.
Again, really liked the episode. The lesson is incredibly powerful and relevant, and everyone should, watch it today for sure. I would have liked to have seen kind of, a little bit more of that carried through, so it didn't look so heavy-handed, like a one-off. Like this is something we not forced to do, but it's something that we kind of have to do, and then we check that box and we moved on. So I will give it a 2.75.
All right, how about you, Justin?
Love this episode. It's my second favorite episode of the whole series. I give it 10 stars. Oh, wait, you can't do that, can you? I give it 4 stars.
All right. June?
I'm going to give this 4 stars also because of the message that was so relevant then, and sadly, it's still really relevant today. So I give it 4 stars.
All right. Susan?
I love so much about this episode. It's not like one of my heartfelt episodes, so I'm going to give it a 3.5.
All right. Taylor?
There's one thing that I super dig about this episode, and that it doesn't end on a colorblind message, which would have been super common. Like, we don't see the differences. The show never makes that argument. It says, we look different. We are different, and we can appreciate those differences. So I dig that. I think that's a really progressive message, especially for 1970. I don't love the idea of witchcraft helping someone cure their racism. And I don't think that is what happens either. I think that's like a simplistic reading, but what I do also dig is when he says, I learned I'm a racist. And it's so frank and just kind of there. And he understands it, and he just understands it as part of his personhood, which is super different from even how we talk about race in 2020. It's like you do everything you can to not be called a racist, and you are upset or offended if someone calls you a racist. And that's not what he does. He says, I learned I'm a racist. And my job going from here on out is to work to not be a racist. And so that's a super cool message. On the whole, I don't really like the episode. I think I'm probably in the significant minority. I think it's super cool that this class worked on this episode. It would have been so awesome to be there. but I give it a 2.
Max, how about you?
Yeah, I think this is a great episode, as I've already said. It's got a brilliant message. I also love the way how Brockway admits he's a racist quite quickly. It's great that we can discuss it 50 years later. I love that as well, and it's just a really great Christmas episode. I give it a 4.
All right, Anna?
I like this episode a lot. I think it's very well done, and that it was a very cool project. You can tell it was a great experience and people had a lot of fun doing it. It's just not the great, like, oh, Bewitched to me, so I'm going to give it a 3.
Okay, and David?
Just basing it on the episode itself, I do like the message and everything, but I'm like Taylor. I'm gonna be in the minority. I'm gonna give it a 2.5.
All right, Mike.
I guess we're gonna have integrated ratings, light ratings and dark.
No.
You open the door. I just walked through it. No. As I said, this is my favorite episode. It's got heart. It's got humor. It has the feel of Bewitched, even though there were so many outside contributions. And also, given the amount of remake episodes that were already going on during this period, it has so much originality, and it is getting a 4 from this warlock right here.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give it 4 stars. I think it's a wonderful episode. Unfortunately, the message is all too relevant today. So again, I give it 4 stars. And so now we're going to average this out and see what we come up with. All right, so we've calculated out the rating for this episode, and we come up with 3.43181818. So this one, we're going to round it down to 3 stars. Yay! All right, does anyone have anything else before we take a quick break? No?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right, we'll be back in just a minute.
And Merry Christmas to all of you at Bewitched.
Bewitched has always conveyed the message of love and acceptance towards those who are different than we are.
In these uncertain times of increasing hatred and bigotry, we are asking everyone to remember the words of Samantha that ring just as true today as they did in 1967.
What of he who looketh different? What of she whose name hath a different sound? If one examineth one's neighbors closely, he will find differences enough so that no one is safe from the charge of witchery.
During this special time of year, a time that should promote peace on earth and goodwill toward all, we at Twitch Talk are asking everyone to please look into your hearts and love thy neighbor.
Welcome back. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. My co-hosts, Mike and David, Eru, Robert, Justin, June, Susan, Anna, Max, and Taylor. All of us on Twitch Talk wish you a very Merry Christmas and a happy and peaceful New Year. Best Twitches.
Hey guys, I'm Erin Murphy. Happy holidays to everybody, and wish we could all be together in person, but maybe next year. Bye.
It's snowing!